This is the Ruckus and The Menace Sports Podcast.
Oh no! We suck again!
I'm getting confused. What game are you calling?
I'm calling both games.
It is caught by Kelsey! Touchdown! Kansas City!
I need 3 of those things, baby. We ain't done yet. We ain't done yet. You like that? You like that? I like that.
How's it going, Ruckus and The Menace Sports fam? You are watching another Ruckus and The Menace Sports production and listening to episode number 116 of the Ruckus and The Menace Sports Podcast. I'm Spence the Menace.
And I'm Ruckus, always causing a ruckus.
And on this episode, we have notable things in the transaction log this week. Our Eastwood segment of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Our film room, where last week I kind of flexed a little bit on the college football, including a perfectly played Pat McAfee troll last week, if you didn't hear it. We recapped week 4 of the NFL in the high heat. Break down the MLB playoffs that have just been formed as the final 2 seeds were decided in our color commentary. And we close out with our stud and dud of the week. Man, Ruckus, today has been quite eventful when you really consider, even though we're kind of dating ourselves here with this, as a couple of major things kind of happened along the way. And the first one that really kind of sticks out in the distance of chronologically, as far as the recent stuff, was the passing away of Dikembe Mutombo at 58 years old, and he passed away from brain cancer.
No, not today.
Man, I didn't necessarily remember Dikembe as a Nugget. I mostly, as a kid, remembered him as an Atlanta Hawk and the whole Mount Mutombo, the finger wag. So I was a kid while Mutombo was in the premier portion of his NBA career.
Didn't he also play for the Rockets?
Dikembe, I believe, I think Dikembe did have some time with the Rockets as well. Played for the Nuggets, Hawks, Philadelphia 76ers, New Jersey Nets, New York Knicks, and finished his career in Houston. Was a 7'2", 245-foot center. And of course, the nickname of Mount Mutombo really started. Actually, Dikembe started out really like my very early childhood. A 4-time Defensive Player of the Year winner. He had 3 years, or actually, he had at least 2 years where he averaged 4 blocks a game, including an all-star appearance where he averaged 4.5 blocks a game in 1995. The 95-96 season, he averaged 4.5 blocks a game, a career high. His career high in scoring, though, really came in his rookie year in 91-92, though he only played 71 games. And he finished second in Rookie of the Year in 1992, the Wilt Chamberlain Trophy. He finished second to Larry Grandmama Johnson. Yeah, Grandmama won Rookie of the Year in 91-92, taking it away from Mutombo. But I think what's even crazier is the passing of Charlie Hustle. Pete Rose passed away today. News broke of this no more than an hour ago.
Yeah.
Like nothing more than like an hour ago from the time of recording. Just that was more shocking than anything else. As Pete Rose was a very good contact hitter in his day.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I think ultimately, by the time we were around and existing, he was already banned from baseball. Or at least the events leading up to his ban were kind of there when I was maybe born.
Yeah, in the 80s.
Yeah. But he passed away at 83 today. But our last remaining ones, we probably should have done Dikembe Mutombo and segue to this, but Karl Anthony Towns was traded to the New York Knicks in a 3-team deal that ultimately sent Julius Randle to the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think that this is going to be very interesting, as now Julius Randle will get to play the 4 for a little bit more. But I think it cuts down the stretching of the perimeter on the Timberwolves, as Karl Anthony Towns is a little bit of a better shooter. I don't know if it's really going to benefit each of these teams fully.
I really don't know either, but Randall, it seems like he was more of an inside paint guy.
Yeah, but then you have Rudy Gobert there, who also is an inside the paint guy.
Weren't they kind of struggling on defense though, or with Karl Anthony Towns?
Oh, Karl Anthony Towns is not really a great defensive player. Rudy Gobert is the defensive core of the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Maybe
when you really break it down.
Maybe they wanted Julius Randle for more defensive help, so that
if
it wouldn't
to kind of
Gobert.
Just Gobert down there, yeah. I mean, that could sometimes be the case there.
Because you have Ant-Man, so the reliance on more 3-point shooting mainly goes to him, and Julius Randle can shoot some threes, but not really known for it. But
yeah, I think Ant-Man. I think Anthony Edwards is more known for being a slasher. He can go up and dunk too.
Yep, I love me my Ant-Man. And then, do you want me to do these next two?
I think we can kind of work along with it. I'm sure that you probably are more fond of the first one.
Derrick Rose retires after, I believe, 16 seasons?
It was like a long, it was like a long career. It was like a 16, 17-year career, because he was coming up drafted when I was a senior, or just past my senior year of high school.
I remember Derrick Rose mainly from... I should have remembered Derrick Rose from whenever he played in Memphis and lost
Memphis,
to the KU Jayhawks in the national championship. Or
when he couldn't hit a free throw to save his life.
Yeah. And then I know this is crappy to talk about, even though he just retired, but I just remember him mainly for the amount of injuries that he withstood in the beginning of his career.
He was a very slashing style of player, and a lot of people. He is a big what if he really didn't have that major ACL injury that kind of messed him up for a good while. But I even think that it's like, oh, Derrick Rose, he wasn't bad. He wasn't bad. But I don't think he was as iconic as some people with their rose-tinted nostalgia glasses on could make him out to be.
Yeah, he was really good at passing the ball and pretty much trying to make people miss when it came to his fancy layups he would do too.
Yeah, he was more of a slashing point guard.
And then the next one we have on here is Vince Carter. to have his jersey number 15 retired in Toronto.
This is good. I don't think Toronto has very many jerseys that are worth retiring in terms of that. So I think having them do Vince Carter is kind of shows the journey of where he's been. Although Vince Carter was more of a journeyman later in his career, I think Vince Carter ultimately was a player that had a ton of longevity because he was able to evolve his game enough offensively to where that when the dunking was just not quite there and the Vince sanity that came with him high flying was not there, he still was able to be a serviceable shooter. A serviceable role player shooter for most of the tail end of his career. That's why he was able to play for 4 decades.
Yep, and it also helped, or not. Yeah, that
Or I should say, play across 4 decades.
Yeah, his 3-point shot really definitely did help him. I also feel like, other than Vince Carter's jersey number being retired for Toronto, I feel like the other iconic players that the Raptors had were Chris Bosh and Siakam, but Siakam's a lot earlier in his career, and Bosh was a classic Toronto Raptor player in my eyes.
Well, Vince Carter is the first player that Toronto has retired a jersey number for, other than the universally retired number 6 for Bill Russell. So that in itself is history making for the Raptors, that they now finally have a jersey number that they can send to the Raptors.
Yep. All right, are we ready for our next segment?
Yep, the tumbleweed may roll now.
All right, here we go. The good, the bad, the ugly. All right, so what is good in sports this week, Mr. Spennis?
All right. I think our good this week came to its end. The MLB wildcard playoff race having its very wild closings, no pun intended. Plenty of AL teams were fighting into the final weekend. And the NL race had a small little suspension due to Hurricane Helen, but it made for a day-night doubleheader to decide the final 2 spots between 3 teams. The Mets and Braves split the doubleheader, and due to the new tiebreaker rules, the Mets and Braves both made the playoffs while the Diamondbacks are sitting at home.
Wah, wah.
And that kind of translates right into the bad, in that the Diamondbacks were eliminated by not really even having so much of, other than maybe that they could have won another game. They were eliminated from postseason contention due to the new tiebreaker rules, of which, due to the expansion of the Wildcard series to best of 3. But at the same time, this would have been a very game 163 worthy type situation. Granted that it would have caused probably 2 days of baseball and exhausted a couple of pitchers in preparing for the postseason. But I still think of, if you want to play, if you really want to show how you earn it in a tiebreaker, game 163s were worth it.
Mm-hmm.
They were bringing revenue into the seats. There were teams that made it from game 163 to the World Series. Especially the last time when it ever happened, as the Dodgers did it. So I could see where maybe a game 163 has its purpose. I mean, granted, the game 163s kind of take up time, which is something that probably MLB doesn't necessarily want to do. But let the Diamondbacks at least fight for it.
Yeah. I feel like also the Diamondbacks fell off a little bit in production because of I feel like Corbin Carroll was really the only key factor to the Diamondbacks near the end there. Because you didn't get much from Lourdes Gurriel Jr. You didn't get much from
Christian Walker.
right. You also didn't get enough from Jake McCarthy or any of the other guys that they have. And Jock Peterson kind of looked like a shell of himself. You also just probably didn't have a lot of luck on your pitching staff. For the most part of the year, Jordan Montgomery was a shell of himself. He was giving up games, it seemed like, every week that he played once he finally got back from the contract negotiations during spring training. He just
With
wasn't
former
the same.
agent Scott Boras. I believe he is no longer a Scott Boras client.
Interesting. But yeah, I think the Diamondbacks just had a little bit of bad luck at a bad time because the Braves were like very beat up. They don't have Acuna. They lost Austin Riley to injury late in the season, but they still managed to come back with the reinforcements that they came back with Ramon Laureano, Gio Urshela, or as Denny Matthews calls him, Ursula. Um, and then like a few other guys, but yeah, like the Braves found a way somehow, and the Mets, I'm surprised, made it this far. But the Mets will do Mets things, and I feel like the Mets are probably going to lose in the first round. But that's just my early prediction. Do you want me to do the downright ugly?
Yeah, I actually am confirming this, that shortly after Jordan Montgomery signed that deal with the Diamondbacks, he did fire Boras.
Probably because he
So,
was like, dog, like I missed a month of the season, and now uh, now it sucks now. Anyways,
yep, hit the downright ugly.
the downright ugly for this week is Brett Favre. What did Brett Favre do this time? Well, this time he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and revealed it while testifying at a congressional hearing for the welfare scandal he was involved in.
Yeah, and I feel bad for Favre in this regard. Because Favre was a heck of a quarterback. He did some dumb, reckless things, as he was really a gunslinger and a really sometimes dumb and reckless football player. But for him to have kind of the same disease of people such as Ali, Muhammad Ali, Michael
And then
J. Fox, and a whole bunch and some other notable celebrities. I mean, Parkinson's is no joke when it comes to how the body wears down from it. But I'm wondering if his time in the NFL and his announcement of even saying that he had like a whole bunch of quote unquote concussions. I'm wondering if the amount of nerve damage he suffered from those concussions led to ultimately ultimately some of the degeneration that resulted in him having Parkinson's. I'm almost curious as to what his to eventually, whenever Brett Favre finally passes away, that of what ultimately the autopsy shows of his nerves and his brain from football is whether, number one, whether he had CTE, and number two, whether the damage that was as a result of his concussions led to ultimately the eventual onset of his Parkinson's disease.
yeah, I don't know, and Wonder if he is going to donate his body to science at some point in the future too, like whenever he
I
passes.
think if you're Brett Favre, I would almost say this would be a good idea. If you're talking Brett Favre and wanting to try and think of what possibly could benefit the NFL in terms of player safety and other different types of things, Brett Favre is probably one of those very good examples to see if there is a possible connection. See if the dots can be connected.
Yeah. Yep. It is
But
definitely.
that's kind of the only.
It's definitely a not a good sign for Brett Favre though with Parkinson's, but
Yep.
I feel like modern medicine in general is advancing more and more each and every year and day as it goes on. So maybe there'll be a cure at some point, but it's very hard to pinpoint that.
I mean,
All right.
you're not necessarily being able to find a cure for Lou Gehrig disease either.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're necessarily going to be able to find cures, but I think Brett Favre, I'm talking in terms of research.
Yeah.
Like the research and the R&D to kind of show those proper directions, that's really where I think that should thrive.
Yeah.
But then on top of that, you have all sorts of different things that can possibly be done. If future medicine can eventually diagnose CTE while a person is still alive, that is breakthrough and shocking. And I'm wondering if this possible NFL thing with Brett Favre and his concussions as a tire into Parkinson's can be something that would do the same
Yeah.
as well.
It'd be kind of cool to see if like you could diagnose CTE like you said whenever the person's still alive, but almost kind of diagnosing it like whenever someone has like a mental disorder or has like I don't know, just like more easier signs to tell, not just by making a joke on Twitter or whatever social media because someone did something stupid after their football career, like Antonio Brown or somebody like that.
Or just Antonio Brown, or just really what Antonio Brown has kind of just done over the last like bit of time. And I think what we're fearing Tyreek Hill may very well be doing.
Oh, he's just trying to get the baby mama tax exemption.
This man is Delulu.
Anyways, let's get into our film room.
Yes. And I, with a perfect college football record last week, soared into a 12-point lead. and I cannot believe, and I don't know if you were shocked about the hard pivot I did going from Georgia to Alabama, but I knew that I knew as soon as I did, I'm like, Ruckus is just going to be like, you just copied that from Pat McAfee.
Yeah, but
I mean, I did, but it was kind of a perfect pivot to do.
yeah,
Because it was the exact same two teams in a very similar situation, and I was just more shocked that it happened. Granted that I nearly had a heart attack with Georgia coming back, but that game was bonkers.
So what was the Oklahoma Auburn game?
Wait, you're talking Oklahoma, Tennessee?
No, I'm talking Oklahoma was at Auburn.
Oh,
This past
Oklahoma was at
weekend.
Auburn.
And they were looking pretty bad through like the first half, going on into the second half, and then they managed to pull out a win through their defense.
Yeah, 27-21, yep. But the games we have this week for 2 points, because these two teams are ranked. Missouri versus Texas A&M.
I'm going with the Mizzou Tigers on this one. Closer to home. for
You
the
are going to
Yankees.
take the number 9 Missouri Tigers on the road. I am going to be taking the lower ranked team, but it's at home. It's Kyle Field. College Station, Texas. Basically the college football field that was known for being dude perfect HQ. I'm taking Texas A&M. Go Aggies. And then we will now move into the ACC with this next matchup. Pitt versus North Carolina.
I'm picking Pittsburgh on this one.
My WVU can't let me do it. I'm sorry. My WVU and my West Virginia ties cannot let me do it. I am taking the North Carolina Tar Heels at home against Pitt. Plus, it's 1 point.
Yeah. And then the
Another one.
Rutgers versus Nebraska Cornhuskers.
Yep, another 1-pointer in the Big Ten. And it is Rutgers versus Nebraska.
I'm picking Patrick Mahomes Jr., Nebraska.
I don't know why you keep doing the Patrick Mahomes Jr. other than that he wears number 15. He does stuff that kind of has the similar look of Patrick Mahomes.
I mean, he kind of
But
looks like
he's-
Patrick Mahomes.
But he doesn't sound like Kermit the Frog. I'm going with Dylan. I am going with Dylan Raiola as well, and I am taking the Nebraska Cornhuskers at home against Rutgers.
You should definitely pick Nebraska and Kermit Jr. Okay,
Well,
I'm done.
and speaking of Patrick Mahomes and his alma mater, the Texas Tech Red Raiders are taking on the Arizona Wildcats. And this is our last one for the Big 12. Texas Tech and Arizona.
I pick Texas Tech because go Red Raiders and also Mahomes. I'm just gonna talk about like Kermit the rest of the podcast.
It is not necessarily an emaw of an every man a Wildcat for Kansas State. But I am going to say this for the Arizona Wildcats, and I'm taking them at home against the Texas Tech Red Raiders.
Yeah, you learned something about K-State, Ema. Let's go.
Well, I was saying it's not necessarily Kansas State in this regard, but
Yeah.
knowing that the Arizona mascot is also a Wildcat, it kind of has to semi-apply. Semi being the emphasis here. All right. And our next game, the first one being in the NFL, and this one's on Amazon Prime, so wine drinking Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit are going to have this one. The Thursday night Amazon Prime game, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Atlanta Falcons.
I honestly
you got?
thought Al Michaels was more of a scotch or whiskey drinker during the show, but wine?
Yeah. I think he's more red wine.
Are you saying that because he likes to whine on the podcast? Or not on the podcast, on the show?
No, but I think no, I think there was that, like, remember how how I think we were talking about that whole thing with Al Michaels and being like completely out of touch, and he was kind of washed up. There was like a whole article that said it was like, oh, he'll drink like wine during like the halftime or something like that.
Last year's games on Prime Video, probably because of how bad they turned out, and the year that they started, he was probably like, "Oh shit, time to time to get the little bottle of scotch going. This is gonna be a rough
Oh,
one."
oh no, it was talking like he had a fine, like he had like fine dining experiences in the booth during halftime of his football broadcast. So yes, it was the lavish, the wine, everything else. So yeah, that's why I was doing the Al Michaels thing there.
Hey, so who do we have for the first one?
I'm gonna fire the cannons. I'm taking the Bucks.
I am also taking the Bucks.
Yep, because here's my belief. I believe that Tampa Bay is a more complete football team than what the Falcons have. Do I think the Falcons have good pieces? Yes. But I think that Tampa Bay just has everything a little more together. And there is something that, and you've heard me say this before, that it's more so about a quarterback and a scheme fit and an offensive fit. Baker Mayfield last year, he had his one-way ticket out of being on the island of misfit quarterbacks. Last year when he joined Tampa Bay and had all that success and had the success.
Yes.
And
It
this
also
year,
felt more like for the
and this
Buccaneers.
year,
Go ahead.
and this year, it's further come along and further cemented that he is the fit in Tampa Bay.
And what I was going to say about Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers, it feels more like his alma mater at Oklahoma, because whenever they score a touchdown, they shoot the cannons at home. At Norman, at Sooner Field, they would they would shoot the cannons like that somewhat in at Norman whenever they would kick it off, or I guess whenever they would score a touchdown too or whatnot. But still, like, it kind of feels similar to that.
All right. The second game that we will have is a division rival for 2 points as well. The Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals.
I am taking the Bengals just solely based off of the defensive pressure that the Bengals can put on, and also just the fact of their secondary, because the Ravens are prone to get intercepted a lot when it comes to playing against good secondaries. You saw this last year in the AFC Championship game versus the Chiefs. You saw it many other times in the past, but I think the Bengals are going to take this because they have better receivers and they have the better defense over the Ravens.
Are we looking at yesterday as just a blip? Are we not paying attention to the 6'4", 230 plus freight train in the room?
If they actually use him, which they used him a lot yesterday, but my point is, I
A
feel
runner
like,
that gets stronger as the game goes on?
listen, I
I'm
think
taking the Ravens here. Give me Baltimore.
I think the Ravens are not very good under pressure. They have shown that they are not good under pressure in the past, and I think it still stands.
And Cincinnati has been a team that has shown that they can be run all over. Yes, you're going to hear me. Yes, you are hearing me say this. They are showing that they can be run on. And I'm actually wanting to look at their rushing yards allowed per game. I'm especially wanting to see this as rushing yards a game. The Cincinnati Bengals have given up 145 and a half yards a game. This is tied with the Atlanta Falcons, and the only teams below them, or above them, or at least below them on the yards per game board, are the Dallas Cowboys, Arizona Cardinals, Carolina Panthers, the Buffalo Bills, who the Ravens just played, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Los Angeles Rams. So yes, Cincinnati is on the bottom end of rushing the football as far as run defense goes. So I believe that John Harbaugh knows this. And he is going to pretty much, I think the game plan is going to be control the clock by the running game. And the Ravens have the running game to do it. They don't need to throw the ball. They have the DBs to cover the receivers of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I think they have the pieces to be able to do all the extra work. I'm taking the Ravens over the Bengals here. Even with this game being at Paycor. The next one here is the Buffalo Bills and the Houston Texans.
I'm picking the Texans strictly because both sides of both the offense and defense are going pretty strong, and I feel like the Texans will probably show that they are the better team over the Bills. Even though the Bills have been doing alright, they still need to learn how Josh Allen and his new weapons are going to answer the call.
So you're going to take the Texans?
Yes, sir.
I am taking Houston at home as well. But my reasoning is that the Buffalo secondary, I think, is going to have their hands full in dealing with what the Houston Texans are able to do on the passing game. However, I think that Houston will need to run the football effectively in order to win. Because Buffalo is near the bottom in rushing yards a game given up. So yes, I am going to say it. Houston should run the football. And what is one thing that's kind of really been more of a major thriving point this year? More often than not, it has been running the football. You're not seeing as high a passing numbers. The teams are doing better running it. The next game here is the Cowboys versus the Steelers.
I am solely picking the Steelers because of the fact that their defense is pretty much helping them, but also their offense will try to put together some offensive plays to help them get some scoring going on the offensive side. And the Cowboys, they're looking beat up, and I feel like the Steelers have an advantage there as most of their defensive help is healthy, and I feel like there's really no clear answer other than Steelers will probably beat the Cowboys.
Artie Smith should be eating this Dallas run defense for breakfast. as far as a coordinator would go. The Steelers should run the football here. Yes, you've heard me say it enough here. Pound the rock, win the game. And the Steelers are generally a team that is designed to pound the rock. They've got a quarterback that can move the ball with his legs. Najee Harris can pound the rock. The Arthur Smith game plan, I swear, most notably, pounding the rock, running the football. Gash them. And this is exactly what I think the Steelers will do. Defensively, I think Pittsburgh also is a little more sound. I'm taking the Steelers here, but I do believe that CeeDee Lamb will find some way to get his. And last but not least, the New Orleans Saints and the Kansas City Chiefs.
I think you know who I'm gonna pick for on this one, and that's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs. I think the Chiefs will somehow manage to win this game. I don't think it's gonna be pretty. I don't think it's gonna be a blowout. I think it's going to come down to a field goal or possibly a touchdown, and I think the Chiefs are gonna beat the Saints.
The
gonna be a
biggest
close game.
thing the Chiefs have done this season, man, they have won ugly. They are 4-0, but absolutely none of those wins were pretty.
Yeah, and dude, when Mahomes threw that big ass pass to Worthy, I was like, who's he targeting this time? Because the last time he did a big pass like he did, it was intercepted, and I think it was to either Rice or Juju or somebody along those lines, but it got picked off. And then the one to Worthy, I was like, oh god, where is he putting this? And he did in my eyes, I saw the Mahomes throw as like an impression of him trying to throw it over the arrowhead sign during practice one day, and that was interesting to say the least. Just seeing him clock it down deep down the field and then Worthy just catches it was amazing. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, so I think that the hardest part about taking the Chiefs here is that the Saints do have still a pretty good secondary. Marshawn Lattimore is still a thing. So the Chiefs are going to have to run the football effectively and really do a lot of clock control, or it's going to be another segment of the calling card being the Chiefs' defense keeping the Saints down. Yeah, the Chiefs have been key defensively, and it's really going to come down to Butker more so much than anything else. But we now move from the games of the future to the games that were in this fourth week of the NFL season. And the first one we will talk about here today, the Atlanta Falcons defeated the New Orleans Saints 26-24. And the question here that I think really sticks out after having those two strong weeks offensively for the Saints to start the season, have they crashed back down to earth?
I thought you were gonna add more to that. So when you said crash back down to earth, I am not sure. I feel like both the Falcons and Saints are very competitive teams. I think Kirk Cousins and the Falcons definitely have improved over what happened last year with Arthur Smith being the head coach now is a offensive coordinator for the Steelers, and the new coach Raheem Morris of the Falcons has definitely improved the team a lot. I think both. I feel like the Falcons and the Saints both have very good secondaries and defenses, whereas the Saints have more weapons available compared to what the Falcons have. Yes, the Falcons are a lot younger, but the Saints have some proven guys like Alvin Kamara. You have um
You have
uh
Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, and
yes.
Rashid Shaheed are the three that are the main weapons for the Saints offensively.
Yeah. And then the secondary for the Saints is a lot older compared to the Falcons. But I think I don't know if it's the Saints crashing back down to earth. I think it's just that they had a tough loss when Hung Wei Koo hit the game-winning field goal. So I don't think they crashed back down. I just think they're two very well balanced competitive teams.
Yeah.
But how do we feel about this next one?
But I also am going to say that I think the Saints have crashed down to an extent. They had a real bad loss the week before to Philly in that ugly game. And then they just can't get the opportunities to try and put the Falcons away. They made too many, and the secondary made one critical mistake. They were one critical mistake from honestly this whole thing turning on its head. So, do I think the Saints have crashed back down to earth? Yes. But do I think that they've really kind of hurt themselves in that crash? Not really.
Yeah. All right, next one. Minnesota Vikings versus the Green Bay Packers. And I think this was more of a question that we had before the insane comeback that would have happened of would you rather have Malik Willis or Jordan Love as your starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers?
Without question, the answer due to the quality of quarterback play is Jordan Love. Yes, did it look like Jordan Love as far as the maximum amount of mobility that he was limited due to having a knee brace on him? Absolutely. The having to protect his knee from any other further injury. And it took Jordan Love a good bit to readjust himself to catching up to what this game was giving him.
Yes.
It did take a little bit. I don't know if Malik Willis would have suffered the same fate early on, but I think Jordan Love did a great job of kind of getting his body retoned or readjusted to what he needed to do. That Minnesota started to let up a little bit, and Jordan Love was being able to find absolutely everything that he needed.
Yeah. I also think it didn't help Love in the beginning because of the fact that that secondary for the Vikings is scary good. Bynum had a few turnovers that helped. Their defense in general really helped the Vikings out. Even
Oh, there
though
were also a couple of
Sam
interceptions that he threw.
Sam
There were a couple of
Darnold.
interceptions that Jordan Love threw that really were more on the wide receiver. How do you have a ball bounce off of two wide receivers that have absolute potential to catch it and end up with the ball going into the other team? How?
I think it also helped for the Vikings that Sam Darnold was having a hell of a game, throwing touchdowns to his receivers and running back. I thought that definitely helped his case. When I was looking at my fantasy numbers, I was like, uh-oh. In one of my fantasy leagues, Darnold is on the other team, and I was looking at the points, I was like, okay, maybe it was a bad idea to put Jordan Love in over Sam Darnold when really they both balled out.
Yeah, but I think it also just depended on how much you lose per pick.
But to answer the question for me, I would say I would have kept Jordan Love because, yeah, he had some bumps on the road, but I mean, he adjusted enough to where they almost won the game. But the thing that was in the way, that wall, was the Minnesota defense taking care of business and coming up clutch in very tight situations.
The next one here, Indianapolis 27, Pittsburgh 24. And the question here is Joe Flacco still showing signs that he can be an ageless wonder?
I think he puts himself in very good situations as far as offensive weapon help and also just protection. And I think it does give him signs of, hey, he is still the guy and he can come up clutch when needed. The same could have been said for backup quarterbacks for the Chiefs as well from past years with Chad Henne and Matt Moore. We're not going to count Blaine Gabbert because he was terrible, but back to the subject at hand, I think Flacco, his days as a Jet were definitely not his greatest days, but the Jets also are the Jets. They're just not that great. And that was during an era where it was when they still had Zach Wilson. And I think it was even before they drafted Zach Wilson was when Flacco was the starting QB for the Jets. I think he's in good situations, like I was just saying.
Yeah, the two words that basically describe a quarterback situation for the Jets: dumpster fire. The quarterback position for the Jets has been nothing short of a dumpster fire over the last few years. And yeah, was Joe Flacco in that dumpster fire? Yes. But I think that Joe Flacco has been showing signs that he's still an ageless wonder because he was doing everything that Anthony Richardson as a quarterback for Indianapolis was not doing. And that is getting the ball out to the receivers that that need the ball to actually do something. Michael Pittman, I think A.D. Mitchell, Alec Pierce. You've got all these guys that he can just throw the ball to. And Anthony Richardson wants to do so much with his legs that he really has no time to be able to get it out to the receivers properly. But Flacco, who is more poised in the pocket, is able to do this. If I were Anthony Richardson, I would be honestly what Flacco's doing and learn. This is why sometimes rookies should not start the first year. Yes, I know we're going to be getting ready to talk about a complete exception to this norm that I'm speaking of, but yes, most of the time these young quarterbacks, Bryce Young benched for a veteran quarterback. Anthony Richardson gets injured. Veteran quarterback has to take his place. So yeah, sometimes these veterans are showing that they still have the chops. But the problem is that I don't know if the younger quarterbacks are really being mentored as well to say, hey, this is what you can do to put yourself in the best position to be successful. For example, a complete Alex Smith to Patrick being that way to Patrick Mahomes for the first year. Yeah, Patrick Mahomes not starting his first year. Aaron Rodgers not starting his first year. Jordan Love not starting his first year. Or actually, in Rodgers and Love's case, it was even longer than that. But yeah, allow time for the quarterback to develop off the field. But now I'm going to shift to that complete exception out of the norm that should be established. Commanders 42, Cardinals 14. And the question here is Jaden Daniels further separating himself as the best quarterback in this current draft class? And I'm going to let you answer this because I have numbers written here for myself to use. And I am going to use that to kind of back something up here.
Jaden Daniels, for what it's worth, is the guy. I think he can gunsling it. He can throw the ball. I think he's a big good luck charm for the Washington Commanders here. I think he helps turn them around in ways that Taylor Heineke and Sam Howell could not, for sure. I would agree with you that he is the best quarterback in this current draft class because Drake May, he's not really playing right now. They decided to start a banged up Jacoby Brissett. And then Bo Nix, he's been all right, I guess, with the Broncos, but Jaden Daniels is him.
If you kind of see the numbers here, what Jaden Daniels has done in terms of efficiency as the quarterback of the Washington Commanders, compared to what quarterbacks in the past have done with that offense, this is completely night and day. 82.1% completion in his first 4 games. This is higher than Tom Brady's completion percentage in 2007 at this point. He's the first quarterback to have back-to-back games where the completion percentage was 85% or better in that game. He had that 90%er against Cincinnati, and then it was about another like 85 plus. I think it was like 87 in this one. But what I have loved about what Jaden Daniels has done in really this season, and really I'm going to say this, ever since he has finally come to DC, it has been that he has shown every bit of class, humility, a poise in a sense that the game just does not look too big for him at any stage of it. He's making the right decisions. He's learning from Cliff Kingsbury, who actually, I'm going to say this, he has now finally found a semblance of a running game as well in his play calling. That's another thing that I'll mention here later on. But Jaden Daniels has just shown that the SEC pretty much is almost like NFL light. And I'm going LITE in this case. Like, it is like SEC football in college is kind of the closest thing to the NFL without it actually being the NFL.
Yeah.
And how Jaden Daniels was able to thrive, win a Heisman Trophy, and also really just set himself up to be effectively successful, and how the Washington Commanders have just been able to build everything so effectively around him at this point. Yeah, it makes the Commanders entirely very scary. And as a Commanders fan, man, I'm loving it. Some notable questions at the quarter season mark. At this point, which team do you feel has surprised you the most?
I I think the one team that's probably surprised me the most is either going to be a tie between the Atlanta Falcons or the New Orleans Saints. Because early on in the season, we were wondering what the hell Arthur Blank was thinking with the draft and just the process of what's going on with Kirk Cousins. And then we thought the same thing about the New Orleans Saints, except for the Saints didn't really spend a whole lot of money on older players. They mainly just tried to keep the gang together and then try and turn things around, which for the most part they have. So I'm going to have to say it's a two-way tie between the Falcons and Saints.
Well, I think the Falcons have done a lot that makes sense. That even though, yes, they drafted Michael Penix Jr. as high as they did, they're taking almost what is like an Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes approach or a Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers approach. And I think that's been super healthy. And yes, I will say this. I do believe that, yes, my Washington Commanders at this point are one of those teams that is surprising. I'm not getting that twisted for a second. But I think a team that I'm going to say as far as where they are at, and it's a surprise that they are there, I still am going to go with the Minnesota Vikings. Skull Nation has done something right. And even though J.J. McCarthy, who was originally supposed to be the starter of this team, gets hurt, if they are so invested in J.J. McCarthy for what's ahead, Sam Darnold is going to get overpaid for what he's doing right now.
Yeah.
This guy's got a bag coming. Or maybe they sit J.J. McCarthy back and let Darnold kind of lead the way, as Kevin O'Connell has just found himself with this quarterback that he can... That Kevin O'Connell is a quarterback whisperer in a way as a coach. And Kevin O'Connell, the Vikings are doing better in games where they win ugly now. Remember how 2 years ago the Vikings were doing so well with winning games that were close. The Vikings are 2-0 in games that were one score. They blew out the Texans and basically just rendered whatever CJ Stroud had for that particular moment just to a very weakened state. The Vikings surprised me with what Brian Flores was able to do defensively. As I wasn't sure, I was very hesitant on what the Vikings were going to have together on that side of the football. Especially with Brian Flores as a coordinator who has had some type moments. Out of all the teams, which team do you think has been the most disappointing at this point?
I'm gonna have to say the Bengals has been a big disappointment because they've not only, they're 0-3. They have
1-3. They're 1-3.
Okay, 1-3. That can't happen, especially if you're on the last year of Jamar Chase's rookie deal, and T. Higgins is looking somewhere else at this point, even though he's franchise tagged. I think it's a big disappointment for the Bengals, especially for Bengals fans, because of the fact that Burrow isn't playing that great. Like, he's playing all right, but his thumb has really been his Achilles heel for the most part with his team.
Okay. I give Cincinnati a small pass because of injuries and the utmost that they've fought respectably after they lost a game that had absolutely no excuse for them to lose, which is the game against New England. That they had no excuse to lose that game. I am going to give the Titans a pass. They are just dealing with growing pains at quarterback. And the growing pains at quarterback are what are kind of limiting them in terms of winning football games, though they are kind of dominating Miami right now. But Miami, I am also giving a pass due to a couple of bad injuries really setting back, really causing that ship to sink. It's like the SS Titanic hitting an iceberg. So yes, if I was going to say that there is a team that is disappointing right now, I am going to say, as far as where I thought they would have been at this point, it is the Cleveland Browns. They're sitting at 1-3, having an really a close loss to the Giants, kind of really a game that was kind of inexcusable. And then you lose to the Raiders close. I mean, you could give them a small pass for Nick Chubb, but there is no pass for what Deshaun Watson has just been ineffective in doing. Deshaun Watson, while Sam Darnold has left this, and Baker Mayfield left last year, welcome to the island of misfit quarterbacks. You just don't belong in that Cleveland Browns offense. I'm sorry. It's not that you're not good. It's just that you don't fit here. You are not the right piece. Too bad that the Browns paid you so much that you really can't go elsewhere. Plain and simple. I think another team that I kind of really can't, another team that, and I give the Rams a pass due to injuries as well. And I think the Eagles can get a small little pass for injuries. But I think another team that, though injuries have kind of hurt them, that loss to Baltimore was inexcusable, even though they fought back. And especially the obliteration they took from the Saints. Another team that I think is disappointing people, and I'm giving you a little bit of an extra dose here, is the walking accident waiting to happen that is the Dallas Cowboys. All right. And which players do you think we have evaluated too high and overrated? Is there a player
Tough
that you think
one.
we kind of had as a kind of valued up a little too high?
I have a feeling we could say that about Amon-Ra St. Brown, or we could say that about tight ends in general. It seems like Kittle and Laporta and Kelsey have all been doing low scoring on fantasy, but it's for a good reason. I feel like Kittle is more of a blocking tight, is doing more blocking. Kelsey's doing more blocking early, and I don't know what Laporta's doing, but I have Laporta in a few of my fantasy leagues, and he just hasn't produced a lot. And I think that's mainly because they're trying to block more rather than actually receive the ball.
I think this has been a year where I think this is a year where the prospectus of what fantasy football or even just football as a whole is this season has kind of shifted once again. We're so used to these passing offenses being able to do things. But yet now you're seeing more too high safety and all these other things going on that the best bet that comes about from that honestly is running the football. I think you're seeing more running backs do things. But a running back that has been severely that I think we've although I did not pick him at the draft slot that he would have been at for a fantasy football perspective. Glad I didn't. But I think a running back who's kind of that we thought would be a lot higher but is overrated but has kind of been overrated is right there on the Tampa Bay Bucks in Rachaad White. I think Rachaad White just had a production spike last year that at a certain point last year that he hasn't been able to find again at the beginning of this season. I think another player that I think we've also severely overvalued may be really I think I'm going to have to say it here. It might end up really being Jamar Chase.
I mean,
Although
he
Jamar
hasn't
Chase
been the greatest since he came into the league because of just the fact that he could accelerate pretty fast after the fact that he caught the ball, and he was also just really good at catching the ball. And then since then, it's just been kind of
Yeah, but Jamar Chase just being when everybody's evaluating him so much as a high-end receiver, but he's not really getting high-end games. Don't get me wrong, he did have a high-end game against Carolina. He had a high-end game against Carolina, but it's Carolina. I mean, he had 3 receptions, 85 yards, and a touchdown. That's kind of not that much. Kind of not that much when you consider it.
Yep.
Jamar Chase against the Chiefs. 4 receptions, 35 yards. He's getting targets, but he's not really getting himself the rock. He had 6 granted he had 6 receptions, 62 yards, but he's not hitting the value that you really want at that wide receiver position. So yes, I am going to, in the sense of what you're wanting out of a Jamar Chase and what you're actually getting in terms of the football that the Bengals have been playing, it's not adding up. The maths just ain't mathing.
Mm-hmm.
And which players do you think we've been absolutely wrong about in terms of the underrated side?
I think if we're talking backup QBs or just people that we didn't think were going to be the greatest, I think Sam Darnold fits one of those players as being underrated.
That is the biggest one that I definitely see that we have severely underrated. We have severely underrated what Sam Darnold could do.
Well, the past few seasons, even when he was starting out in New York, he was not that great, but he was also in very bad situations.
Yeah. Let's see here. I think a player that I think I may have undervalued in the sense of just how much I think the Giants were going to be able to find him and get him the ball and he's balled out as a rookie. I'm going to say it's Malik Neighbors. I mean, they got him up high for a reason, but I was nervous about him going to the Giants in that Daniel Jones is not going to find him the ball. I didn't think that that was going to be the best ability to find the football. Boy, was I wrong. I was wrong. In the sense that they are just playing good. They're playing good football. Like, he's playing good football. That is definitely a player that I kind of had on my underrated radar. I think another one that I caught on the underrated radar, obviously other than Sam Darnold, may very well have been Lad McConkey as well, in just how
Yes.
much that he has been so valuable for the Los Angeles Chargers. Like, just a couple of guys that I'm like, I've just was not expecting a lot out of. I mean, granted that I knew Malik Neighbors was going to be good. I just feared how much Daniel Jones was going to be able to get him the ball. But Lad McConkey, we weren't expecting much. I wasn't expecting much. And he's balling. We ready to move on to...
Yes, please. Let's move on to the next
Yes.
one.
This week's color commentary is Breaking It Down, MLB Playoff Edition. And our tales of the tape go to the first wildcard week, and it is the American League. The New York Yankees and Cleveland Guardians are the teams that get the byes. And we have the number 3 seed Houston Astros taking on the number 6 seed Detroit Tigers. And the number 4 seed Baltimore Orioles and the 5 seed Kansas City Royals. The question is, which team takes it and in how many? And we will start with the Astros and the Tigers.
I think the Tigers probably put up a good fight, and I don't know how the Astros will combat that, but I think the Tigers upset the Astros.
I think the lack of starters for the Tigers and kind of that balanced pitching rotation and that balanced bullpen that they've had makes the Tigers very, very scary. And from there, I am going to say that unless Yordan Alvarez has a pretty full recovery, I do not see much coming from what the Houston Astros can bring. I think the Tigers can take this one in 3 games. It's going to take all 3, but I think the Tigers are going to be able to do it. And the Tigers are coming in hot for the postseason.
Well, I think that they could be a scary upset.
And for you to come in hot for the postseason, granted that they lost 2, but prior to that, they had to come in hot just to get to this point. Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it that it was a very, very hot start for the Tigers. And I'm hoping that they can just pick up right where they left off. Taking the Tigers.
All right.
But then the Orioles and the Royals.
Choose your next words carefully, Spennis.
I was going to let you go first.
All right, I'll go first then. So this one's a tough one because the Orioles, they had a really good season last year. Uh, and this year their weapons that they got from the trade deadline were Austin Hayes and Sir Anthony Dominguez, and I believe probably one other guy, but I'm probably leaving some people out.
Oh, they traded
Um,
away Austin Hayes.
They trade him away. Oh yeah, because he went to the Phillies. My bad. Um, yeah, I. It's been a while. I feel like the production from Rushman and company is kind of slowed down a little bit since they were pretty hot in the beginning of the season, and then this part of the season they kind of slowed down. Granted, the Royals right now, I did not expect them to have a 7-game losing streak and then still get into the damn wild card. Like,
These were two teams that kind of limped their way in. Baltimore has surged a little bit and won their last 3, but the offense has had moments where you need to put out an APB for them. But I am going to take the Orioles in 3.
the Royals in 3 because I think, if anything, if the Royals starting pitching shows up and their bullpen doesn't shit a chicken, will be just barely enough. And I don't know if Vinny Pasquantino is going to be starting in any of these games in the beginning, but if Pasquantino can ball out, I think he'll be okay. But I'm a little concerned about his production, especially coming back after like a month or two of not playing because of the fact that he had a broken hand, and I just don't know what that means for him in this offense. It kind of reminds me of when the dirtbag Jason Kipnis came back from a big injury with the Guardians. I think it was in 2017, 2018, whenever
You
they were
mean
trying
you're
to go
talking
for...
the 2016 series?
No, because in 2016, they went to the World Series and Kipnis was healthy. And I think the year after that, Kipnis was in the lineup but was hurt. Well, was coming back from an injury, was playing the outfield, and the Guardians, I believe, at that point, like lost in the division series. I think it was either 2017 or 2018.
Yeah. But I love how you basically, instead of like saying crapping a chicken, wouldn't the better term for this be laying an egg? Because the chicken's got to poop it out.
That's mainly a reference to Talladega. It's a reference to Talladega Nights, man. Come on, because the guy was like at the beginning was like, our sponsors are gonna shit a chicken if we don't get our car back on that field. Who's gonna race? And then Will Ferrell's like, I'll go in. Anyways, I
But
think
I
the
am going to
Royals.
take, but I am taking that the Orioles. Yeah, but I'm also going to throw in there that the Orioles, just as long as they don't offensively lay an egg, they should come away with this, because I think they've got the starting pitching that is a little more synonymous with dominance.
Final notes for me on the Royals: do not give up offensive opportunities like you have when you had the 7-game losing streak, and just in general throughout this past week. Do not look bad, because there's not going to be big second chances like you were getting with other teams, especially because the National Series, yes, you swept it, but the series prior, you should have won those against the Tigers, against many of the other teams, but the Achilles heel for the Royals was the Tigers, just in general, late in games. It's been like that for years. Since I was growing up in Kansas City, it had been like that. But yeah, I think Royals take it. But let's move on to the National League.
Yep, the National League. The Dodgers and Phillies got buys. And the first series we will talk about here is the number 3 seed Milwaukee Brewers and the number 6 seed New York Mets. Who you got?
I think the Brewers will take it for sure. I don't know about how many games, but I think they take down the Mets. Is Christian Yelich still out?
I don't know if Yelich is still on the IL.
Let's look here. Brewers roster or depth chart, I should say.
Yeah, that's the
I don't know.
Yelich is not on the lineup.
Let's see here.
Yeah, I don't see Christian Yelich anywhere.
Christian Yelich is on the 16-day, or not 16-day, 60-day IL with his back, and that was in September or early September, September 8th. So yeah, he's not on.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, he's not
but
there.
You do have William Contreras, Gary Sanchez, Rhys Hoskins, Bryce Terang, Willie Adames, Jackson Churio, and Garrett Mitchell as your big guys on the block. I think if their pitching does well, like Frankie Montas balled out near the end. Savali, he's okay. Freddie Peralta being their ace kind of freaks me out a little bit. But if Devin Williams can stay healthy, I think they get far into this. And then the Mets, they'll do Met things and find ways, but they also find a lot of ways to screw up and lose.
Yeah, and they definitely find Met ways to do things, and I think that so long as Pete Alonso and all the others that have, and also Francisco Lindor back is able to keep them in it, I believe that the the Mets can make it interesting. However, I think the Brewers will win this one, and I think they will sweep it. I think they'll come away with two wins right off. Because I think the Mets, with that doubleheader that they just had, are kind of going to be a little worn down. And it's just a little mentally taxed. Like, just that mental tax.
Yeah.
That a doubleheader does.
And then the next one we have is Padres Braves. And I think let's see here. You started off.
The Friars in 2. I think the Braves are they're another team that I think is going to be worn down. Ozzy Albies is now pretty much exclusively hitting from the right side due to an injury. So that kind of takes away the switch hitting versatility that he has. And I think the Braves are without so much. I think I'm gonna take the Friars in 2.
Yeah, as long as Dylan Cease and company can manage their innings and just shut down the Braves, I think they'll do just fine. Because the Padres' main stars are Machado, Cronenworth, Bogarts, Profar, Tatis, Arise, and Merrill. You also have Tanner Scott in your bullpen and then you have some good starting pitching with Cease, King, Darvish, and Perez. I wouldn't really say much about Joe Musgrove because he barely played at all. But I think the Padres have a better shot against the Braves because you don't have Acuna and you have a barely functioning Ozzy Albies when it comes to his health. Travis d'Arnaud has gotten kind of hot, so let's see what happens there later on. You still got some other B-list bench guys that came in clutch, like Gio Urshela and company, but it's a very close one, and I think the Padres win it in 3.
Nice. All right, and now we can move on to our stud and dud of the week. Ruckus, take it away.
All right, so I will start with my honorable mention for the stud, and that is Andy Reid's speech delivery on Rice's injury. The reason I say this, even though it's messed up that he could possibly be out for the rest of the season and more with the suspension looming, I thought the the going into halftime, his speech to Rachel Wolfson, because she was asking him about the Rice
Or
injury.
Tracy Wolfson.
Or Tracy Wolfson. He's like, so how about that? What's the status on Rasheed Rice's injury? And he just simply says, "Well, it's not good," and then just walks off. I was like, oh shit, that ain't good. But also like, damn, I don't think I've ever heard Andy Reid say, "Well, it's not good." Usually he's like, we'll take it day to day, and yeah, I'm not gonna talk much about it. And this time he's just like, it ain't good, Chief. It ain't good. I'm like, damn, okay. My dud for the week is the penalties for the O line on the Chargers, especially because they had a lot of false starts and some other penalties, and they were also without their star guard that they drafted in the first round early, Joe Alt. But my stud for this episode is Mr. Bobby Witt Jr. for not only getting the MLB batting title, the 5th in Royals history, but his statement about being in the postseason, talking about dreaming of being in the postseason and wearing the shirt and buying the shirts of teams that he followed when he was a youngin', and now being able to wear the shirt for his team that signifies the team going into the postseason. And also living in the glory of being able to celebrate with his teammates, too. I think Bobby Witt, in the nutshell, from last season to this season, has been a huge improvement. And that's an understatement. He is the guy for the Royals. There's a reason he signed that big contract. But, Spennis, I'm going to let you take over.
Okay, my stud this week. I am going with Commanders offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury for calling a spectacular game offensively in the 42-10 route, or 42-14 route, I should say, of the Arizona Cardinals. This game was a dominant one for the Commanders. It's his former team that he was the former head coach of. Gets a game ball from Dan Quinn. He's just like, yeah, you're not leaving without one of these. And yeah, you can call it a petty game, but it's not really a petty game when it's more of a true revenge game for Kingsbury, who just was calling That was a good game. And developing an understanding of knowing the usage of the running game. That is the main piece that I am excited for the development of Kingsbury as a coach. And now on to our dud. The dummy of the episode. It is now former UNLV quarterback Matthew Sluka for quitting during the season. Now, what would you think of reasons to generally quit in terms of football? An injury? Something not quite right that you're like, I kind of want to sit and just be able to transfer. This is quitting due to just trying to think of just give me my money. In that there was $100K in NIL money that was not being paid to him. The Rebels were currently undefeated and have remained undefeated at this point.
So Matthew Sluka's inner Mr. Krabs going money, 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 money did not help.
Exactly. He's quitting over money. And NIL, which this is the reason why NIL shouldn't have existed.
I think what they should have done was, instead of the NIL, was allow player likenesses, but to the point where it's not super restricted to where they could have brought college football back, like the video game and other things. Not necessarily to the point where it's almost like they're being paid like they are.
Yeah, they're being paid more like NFL players for college.
I think that's gonna kind of screw over college football, because at that point, like, do people still watch college football, or do they realize, oh, well, this is kind of like the NFL, but more fun to watch because it's really unknown players trying to go to the pros versus...
Yeah, it's young players. Yeah.
So, like, I don't know how the NIL really changes the college football landscape, but I don't think it's a good thing, to be honest. But we will just have to see in the future. But it's definitely not looking the greatest. Money has always been a factor in just politics and everything in general that has to do with life as a whole, but I don't like it.
Yeah. Go ahead and take us out, Ruckus.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Ruckus and The Menace Sports Podcast. I am Ruckus, always causing a ruckus.
And I'm Spence the Menace.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, the greatest podcast in the land. This was episode number 116. I am Ruckus, always causing a ruckus.
And that's it for us. Deuces.